Hello everybody. So guys, we'll be starting with this particular webinar a little bit about myself. My name is Ashish. I have around 15 years of work experience. I have a techno business background. Techno business in the sense that I have been working with technology companies such as TCS, IBM, Amdocs, and a few more over the last 15 years. I have also been in you know been entrepreneurial, worked with top tier management of certain companies. Uh, I'm also I'm also a pass out from Indian School of Business in Hyderabad. So what I bring to the table and what I do understand is how technology and business interact. Okay, so so much so for myself. I'll begin with what we have as part of this webinar. So essentially, as part of this webinar, we are going to give you a brief glimpse about how we create a responsive web application using Cake PHP. The objectives of the webinar and the points that we are going to touch upon would be, basics of MVC infrastructure, how PHP and MySQL interact, a brief glimpse into arrays, strings, and conditional logic. Reason being, this form the core of any application, whether it's a web app or any other app. These are very important ingredients into in building a web application. Now let's take a look at the companies which are using PHP. Yes, PHP is very popular. So you see companies such as Facebook, Yahoo, Zynga, eBay, Rediff, Flickr, and a lot more companies are using PHP. So, and this is precisely the reason why you also have quite a number of job openings. So this particular slide is essentially taken from from Indeed.com, and this shows the job trends which is there. Don't be bothered about the dip over here because what we are showing on the y-axis is the percent. So as of now, PHP is growing by almost like more than 125%. Uh, if I compare it to the previous period. Okay, and when I say previous period, what I mean to say is the previous Jan month in 2014. Okay, so a little bit about PHP and MySQL and basically an overview. What is PHP and MySQL? PHP is essentially a server-side scripting language. So what happens is in any web development, what you see on the web page is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That is what forms the core of the front end. But there has to be a system or some kind of a mechanism which is generating that HTML page, or which is kind of putting the business logic into that page. That engine is PHP. So PHP and MySQL is the database behind this particular engine. They help in creating the entire web app, and hence this is a very important ingredient in any web application. In fact, any web application would not be the right word over here, but I would rather use the word most of the web application. Now let's take a look at the figures shown below. What we see here is PHP is almost 5 times more popular than any of the other tools that we have, the languages that we have for server-side scripting. So yes, one, it is definitely popular. It is used by organizations big and small. It is still growing, and you know big and small governments, everybody, yeah, they all understand the need to have a robust system, which they can use for not just developing their initial applications, but also for ramping it up. Now let's take a look at the journey which PHP has taken so far. So yes, it was started around 20 years back in 8th June 1995. PHP was officially launched. PHP is, what was, you can say, is personal homepage, but I don't think people relate it by this name anymore. Over the years, we got different versions: PHP 2, PHP 3, 4, 5, and the latest one, PHP 7, is going to come in mid-October 2015. The the last version, which got released was around 2 weeks back, which is PHP 5.6.9, which essentially is, they have this is a bug fix of the release which happened on 20th August 2014, is almost like a year back. So it had certain bug fix which got, got rectified in this particular version. For guys who are already working on PHP, it's very important to note that PHP 5.3 is not supported anymore. PHP 5.4 is supported as of now, but it is going to be supported only till September 2015, which is approximately 5 months from now. So in case you are using your PHP in your current workplace, or in any of your projects, then it might be a good idea to upgrade your the this particular setup that you have over here there. Similarly, let's take a look at MySQL. What is shown over here is the product roadmap for MySQL. If you take a look, it was also started around 20 years back in 1995. So, and it was at that point of time that the first release of MySQL happened. What is important to note is that MySQL and PHP, they got into the market at approximately the same time, and they have been traversing this journey over the last 20 years or so. And companies continue to believe that PHP and MySQL is something which they can use for building their web applications. But then again, what brings us to the uh, you know picture is PHP and MySQL alone convenient, or is it something that you can use for developing a web application? Probably no. This is where, just a moment please. Yeah, this is where frameworks such as Cake PHP come into the picture. Now let's get on to what the benefits of PHP and MySQL are. Yes, they are, each of these platforms, yes, first of all, they are open source, they are free of cost, they are platform independent, you have very fast development time cycles, because these systems are in place over the last 20 years. So you have very huge, large communities who continue to provide input to, to the development of PHP and MySQL. Proven and trusted, yes, of course. Facebook is using, Zynga is using, so it has to be proven and trusted. And so, all in all, both PHP and MySQL, they have withstood the last 20 years, and the way the companies have used it to build an initial application, then ramp it up. So, and the trust factor is definitely there, in using these languages and the database in building the application. Okay, there is a question from Meghraj. Yes, Meghraj, definitely. So Meghraj's question is something like this: is Cake PHP secure to build web application and publish it to the production environment? Yes, definitely it is. For reasons more than one. So what happens is, if I use a simple PHP application for developing a web application, even my business logic is exposed to the user, and the person is able to see, what database, what tables name we are using. Okay, so um, so so when we use Cake PHP, it brings about a data abstraction over there. The person is, what he is able to see it is only the view part on, and he's not aware of the model and controller. But let me touch upon these points later on, because these are meant to be covered in this particular webinar, which I will definitely do that. Let me take another question from Shrikant. Shrikant's question is, why should we use only MySQL with PHP? Well, Shrikant, the thing is, no, we are not saying you can use only MySQL with PHP. So in this particular webinar, we are touching upon MySQL is because that is what most of the companies have been doing. Okay, but yes, definitely you can use some other databases also along with the MyPHP. Abhishek has a very interesting point. What he is saying is, how can we say that the underlying logic can be seen by the end user when you don't use any framework? It is only the HTML that is rendered to the user. Look, in case of in case of when using the plain PHP, what you're right. It's only the HTML is shown to the user. That is right, Abhishek. Okay, but the fact remains is that when you're using plain PHP, there's a greater chance of having SQL injection. That you definitely would agree to over here. Praveen has a question. How to prevent. How to prevent a web page from SQL injection. Well, that is something that let's keep it aside for the time being. What we can do is I'll connect with you, Praveen, after this particular webinar, because that's a separate area altogether. Okay, and then we'll touch upon this thing. Shashank has a question on what are the special features of Cake PHP. So let's, I think this is the right time to, take, go on and move further on the MVC infrastructure and then take it from there. Okay, Shashank. So let's move on, guys. My PHP and MySQL, yes, you can use it for creating a website, and it can help you in creating dynamic web pages and things like that. So essentially, like .NET or like Java, PHP and MySQL can be the the core of your web application. Using this, you can interact with the database, track user information, and develop responsive web applications. Now let's take a look at the MVC infrastructure. Okay. So what is MVC infrastructure? MVC, if I have to put it this way, is essentially model, view, and controller. So why this thing essentially happened? Because we want, what the companies realize is that it's very important to keep the business logic away from the user. So what the user sees is just the view. He is not somebody who should be able to see what what your database structure is like, or what your field structure is like, or what your business is like. Okay, the view is what should be visible to the user. And guys, help me understand. Very basic question. What do you mean by view? Anybody? The content seen by the user, very much right. So essentially, views are the the HTML which is rendered. So what is essentially visible to the user after a web application is on the web application, he is able to see the HTML, he is able to see the CSS, and he is able to see the JavaScript. Is he able to see the PHP? No, he is not able to see the PHP. Definitely not. So how does PHP interact with the HTML? Okay, so what happens is in a MVC infrastructure, when the views are rendered, okay, the business logic is kind of passed from the controller to the view, and he is able to see as to what is what is to be displayed to the user. This is what the developer, according to the business business requirement, is able to show it to the user. Model is where you keep the information how your MVC, how your system is supposed to interact with the database. Okay, so the table related information is stored in the model, and also the, if you have some validation or some logic, that also can go there. So we'll touch this a little more as when, we take a live demo, and probably it will be much clearer, or, at that point of time. So when we say about PHP and MySQL interaction, let's take a look at very basic scenarios as to, what are things can we do from using a SQL. You can, normally what do business do? Okay, yes, you can say they are DML, they are DDL statements, they are DML statements, but most ultimately most of the things that you do is either you retrieve certain information from your tables and throw it to the user, or you basis certain interaction by the user, you make certain changes in your database, or make it pass through certain business logic, and you know kind of make those changes over there. Okay, but ultimately what happens is, when we are retrieving, we are doing a retrieve operation. Ultimately, yes, we are supposed to connect to database. Then you execute certain queries. Whatever you execute the query, you get certain information back from the database. You store in an array, and then you finally display that data to the user. This displaying of data is what you call as the rendering of that, that is a subset of that rendering of that HTML. Finally, when you're supposed to make insert or update operations, what you do is, again, yes, you again connect to the database, you execute that insert update queries basis what is being input from the user, check the status whether it's processed properly or not, if something happened, and display the relevant information over there. Like we discussed right at the start one of the objectives, we wanted to touch upon arrays, strings, and conditional statements, because this is the core of any web application, not just web application. Any application, you have to deal with these concepts. And here I'm talking about arrays. Arrays are important. Yes, why? Because you retrieve certain information from the database. Not every time it will be in the form of a single element. It will be in the form of a multi-dimensional array. It can be 5 into 1 array, 5 into 3 array, things like that. So ultimately, as a developer, you have to process that information, make it convert into a form in which it can be consumed by your front-end application. When I say front-end application, I mean to say the HTML, and display it over there. Strings handling is also very important, because over here also, if you want to perform certain operations, say for example, you retrieve a certain date over there, but you want to show that date in a different format, or if you, so these are the areas where you need to, as a developer, we need to, use the relevant keywords and use it in our, processing. Conditional statements again is very core to any programming. I mean, let's forget PHP, let's forget Java. Any language you go to, it's the same set of if, else if statements, switch statements. Just the syntax varies a little bit over here and there. And since we are talking about cake PHP, over here, let's very briefly touch upon the major keywords that we have over here. Array is there. Okay, array is essentially something where we define the particular array. I'll show you a live demo also, as to how exactly it is done over there. As far as string operations are concerned, you have a string length. You can do a reverse of the string or replace a string by something else. So this is something very run-of-the-mill kind of programming logic, which you find not just in PHP but with all the with all the languages. Just what differs is, somewhere it's called strlen, somewhere it is called strl, and things like that. So we'll touch upon this thing in the demo also. So guys, if you have any question at this point of time, I would love to hear that and take it at this stage before we move on to, responsive web application development using PHP and MySQL. So I believe there are a couple of queries that we have. Shrikant has a query as to how to run PHP app without server on my local system. You can well there uh, you know uh, there are quite a few applications which you can use to which you can download on your particular laptop or desktop. XAMPP is, say for example, something which you can use. VAMP is another. So you can use this particular software for creating a local server on your machine. Praveen has a question as to, what are other things that are DDL and DML in MySQL that you can do. Look, essentially, MySQL is a full-fledged database, and it gives you all the capabilities, whether it's DDL or DML. Uh, the basic operations are, of course, you want to, although most of the business logic is about, whether you're able to retrieve the information or not, whether you're able to, make certain, update your database or not. But I think the DDL and DML is not very important. What is more important is, and this is where the most of the organizations fail, is whether you have a, we have a database structure or the architecture which is in sync with your business requirements. Okay, if your database structure is not in sync with your business requirements, then the companies struggle. And companies struggle, they are able to build the initial app, but they struggle when they want to ramp it up. So that I believe is a more important thing over here. I think, yeah, Shashank has a question as to which data development environment is better, whether it's Windows or Linux for Cake PHP. Guys, it doesn't matter, whether you use Windows or Linux. uh, like we discussed, I think it was probably the third or the fourth slide where we said it was platform independent. Ultimately what matters is you have to, the whatever it has to render the HTML page, and the HTML page can be rendered on whether it's it, it should be able to, it would be rendered whether, on the user platform, whether he is using an iPhone or whether he is using a Windows application or whatever he is using. As far as development environment is concerned, I think I'm agnostic, as far as a development environment is concerned. You can use Windows or Linux, it doesn't matter. So Praveen has a question over here, as to what, what is the function of controller? Okay, Praveen, let's do one thing. I'll just touch upon this briefly. Controller is something, which helps you in, you can say rendering the HTML page. But I think at this point of time, let's hold on this question for a while and let's move on. When I give you the demo, it will be a little more clearer over there. So a couple of questions more over here. One question is Shrikant has a question as to, can we use other database other than MySQL? Yeah, definitely you can use other database. Ultimately, PHP, like we said, it can interact with a number of databases, not just MySQL. But yes, the industry accepted norm is, whenever you think about PHP, the first thing which comes to your mind is yes, MySQL is something which you can, use along with it. And it is more to do with the fact that, the evolution of PHP and MySQL happened at around the same time, back in 1995. Shubham has a question on security about PHP. So, when we're talking about the MVC infrastructure, it touches upon exactly the same thing. When we are talking about data extraction, we're talking about hiding the business logic from the end user. And this Cake PHP is a very, very robust framework, and it has withstood the last several years in and helped organizations in developing very, very robust applications. Okay, guys, let's move on to the demo. Okay, and before we do that, let me ask you a very I'm touching over a very, very basic question over here. Yes, we all talk about responsive web application. Now, what is responsive web application? I just want to understand what is your perspective of a responsive web application. Then we'll take a look at what's happening in the industry right now and take certain bits and bits of information there, and then move on to explaining the underlying logic around it. So, so guys, shoot your questions, please. So yes, Shivappa, very much right. It's something which can fit any screen. That's right. Shikant also has a similar point which says, you can use you can use your app on any device, whether it's a mobile, laptop, or something, anything. And Shashank has also made a very valid point. It should be able to fit on devices which have different screen sizes. Bang on, guys! You're very much bang on target. This is exactly what a responsive web application is supposed to do. So let's take a look at some of the responsive web applications that are there in the market today. Let's start with Flipkart. We all have shopped on Flipkart, right? Or at least we have heard about Flipkart. So what do you think? Is Flipkart a responsive web application? Yes, no. Praveen says yes. Shrikant says yes. Good. Yes, Shashank. Megraj, Shivappa, bang on target. Yes, Flipkart is a responsive web application. Praveen has a point which says that they have mobile version site also. Yes, they have, but um, let's take that later. What we are talking about is a particular web application. So what my question is, I have on my screen Flipkart.com, and the question which comes to my mind as a user, is it a responsive web application? So let's check, something very basic which we all can do, on our machines. What I'm doing, doing a right click and inspect element. Okay. So are you able to see this particular small icon over here? Okay. So when I say Flipkart, when we say Flipkart is a responsive web application, so let's put it on any device. In Chrome we have this facility. You can do some kind of analysis of responsive web pages. So what this is Flipkart.com. I'm not talking about m.flipkart.com. I'm talking about Flipkart.com. Okay, and what I have done is I'm trying to see whether I can see Flipkart.com on an Apple iPhone 6 or not. Yes, I can. Let's see if I'm able to see it on an iPad or not. So you see what this particular application, and when I say application, I mean Flipkart.com is doing is it's able to fit the content in that particular website on different devices, whether it's Apple iPad or whether it's an iPhone 6 or iPhone 5. Okay, so you understand as to what we mean when we are saying a responsive web application. So what is happening over here on Google Nexus 5, which is a dimension of 360 and 640, okay, we are able to see this particular web application. And at the same time, if I move on to Apple iPad, I'm able to see this particular web application. It is able to adjust its content according to the device, and the user is, so the same content is being rendered on different device over here. Right, guys? Okay. Now what we will do is we'll take a look as to how they're able to make it happen. So what I'll do is I'll switch it back to the normal mode. So we are again back to how it is displayed on a laptop. Now let's take a look at how this is how they are able to do it. But let me take a pause and take you to another site. over here. So this is essentially a very good example of how responsive grid systems work. At this point of time, let's, without getting the technicalities of it, let's take a look at how this particular web page is behaving when you change the size. Okay, so what I have done a very simple thing over here. I have just reduced the size of this particular screen, and let's take a look as to how these are different dev blocks over here. There are different blocks within this particular site, and let's see how they adjust within the screen as and when we decrease the size. So you're able to see, right? So what has happened is, each of these blocks, which were there in the full length screen, okay, we are able to see it on the smaller screen as, also, but they have been readjusted according to the screen size. This is what we call as a responsive grid system. Okay, I give you a very, uh, uh, as we move into the demo, okay, I'll show you an example as to how exactly these companies, whether it's a Flipkart or even Edureka, we are having this webinar from Edureka, how they are able to do it. Now let's take a look over here. Even over here, if I do something like inspect element, I go to this particular thing, and this is how it is shown on a iPad, right? And if I change it to, say for example, iPhone 6, then still it is being shown. Okay, so one example which we saw sometime back was regarding this particular responsive grid design. We are able to see how this particular blocks rearranged when the width of that particular site was curtailed or shortened, if I may put it this way. Let's take a okay, let's take a look at this Flipkart thing again. I wanted to show you something very interesting. What I've done is I'm taking a look at the source code, the view source of Flipkart.com, which all of us can do. We don't need a special permission for doing that. And I find the first CSS file. Okay, so CSS is what is used for rendering of HTML pages to the user. Okay, I'm taking a look at the CSS file of Flipkart.com. This is something which is there in the system, guys. It's not something which I'm using any special password to access that particular system. You can do it in your off time, or you can do it after this particular webinar and take a look at it. Now let's try to find out media. Look, what you see over here is the minified version of CSS. So what companies do is, in order to have a better user experience, they minify the CSS files. That is why what is shown on my screen is appearing as garbage. Actually, it's not a garbage. It's a very proper code. But the only thing is, it has a minification of CSS, JavaScripts, and these files help us because it helps in the faster load time. Also, it helps in kind of hiding your code to a certain extent. It's not actually hiding; it's just it removes the spaces and all from the end user. But what we are able to see over here is that what Flipkart is doing. It's using the media queries. So, let's focus on this particular point. It is saying, okay, media all and max width is equal to 1006 px. So when the width is between 978 px and between 1006 pixels, okay, this is how they have instructed the CSS to behave. So this is a very, very live example, guys. I mean, this is in the production of Flipkart, we are not, again, I'm repeating, I'm not using any password or something to see this particular thing. This is very much there. And this is how they're using media files to create a responsive web application. Let me touch very briefly about what it does is essentially at media all it's a media query, and it's something which which is a recent but not a very recent development in CSS. And using this, you can create responsive web applications, put that particular logic within the CSS itself, and say that, hey, you know what? If the size of the screen is between 1006 pixel and 978 pixel, this is how I want my data to be shown to the user. And by data, I don't mean the content. What I mean is the what kind of layout should be shown to the user. And let's try to find certain other media files. So over here, what you're saying is here its minimum width is 1270 pixels. So what essentially the developers at Flipkart are saying is, if the minimum width is 1270, anything above 1270, this is how it should behave. Their particular, the CSS files. Over here, what has happened is, in this particular, they have specified a width of 130 pixel. Okay. Praveen has a question about changing upon the device resolution. Okay, I believe it was answer to the previous query uh, that was there. Let me take a look at the questions that we have. Since we have quite a good number of participants, so do we have a good number of questions? So it's quite possible that I might not be able to answer all the queries. I'll definitely do my best to answer as many queries as possible. But if at all I'm able to, if I miss out on certain queries, I'll make sure that I'll reach out to you guys individually and, answer your queries over there. I hope that's all right. Okay, Shrikant, coming to your question. Your question is about jQuery. Okay, jQuery is, you can say, a little more advanced thing of JavaScript. Look, what happens is, let me again go back to this particular example of Flipkart. Let's see whether they are using jQuery or not. So you see over here, okay, they are using this particular carousel, which you know in jQuery you have this particular application. Then tabs is something you have as part of jQuery. Essentially, let's try to understand what is the use of JavaScript. Okay, let me put it this way. Once the HTML is rendered, it resides on your local machine. So let's take a look at this particular example. When I say this particular flipkart.com, when I have this when this site is rendered, okay, so all of these things, including the pictures over here or the refrigerators over here, I mean the pictures, they are on my laptop, okay. But I mean, say for example, if I do certain action, for which Flipkart doesn't want to go back to the server and do a validation or, take certain actions over there. And it is at that point of time, it is at that point of time they use JavaScript or jQuery. Let me give you another example. Let me find if they have a date over here, date example over here. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's go to yatra.com. What I have done over here is, okay, just a moment. It is taking a bit of a time to load. Let's say I want to take a round trip. Okay, this is just one, guys. Uh, let's say if I want to go from Bangalore to Mumbai, okay, and say for example, I want to take a trip on 10th of June. Okay, now what has happened is almost instantaneously, Yatra.com knows that my return trip cannot be earlier than 9th. Obviously, for if I'm taking a trip of 10th, I can return only on a later date. But do you see any refresh happening over here, or any anything is it making any connection to the to the server? Nothing else is changing. Whatever is happening on my local machine only. What has happened is using JavaScript, they they have been able to calculate if a date, if a deposit date is 10th, so my return date can only be something which is ahead of 10th. It can be 20, it can be 21, it can be 28 or 30, but it has to be some later date only. Now let's take a look at how this part they are able to do that. Yatra.com. I'm again taking a look at their source, view source of their HTML file, and I'm taking a look at their, trying to find out if they have something called date over there, some logic around date. So are you able to see this particular thing? So a script is no, this is HTML only. Okay, so this is JavaScript over here. Look guys, I'm not getting into the details of it as to how exactly this logic has been built into Yatra, but the one thing is very obvious is that yes, they're using some kind of a math or some kind of a JavaScript around date. Okay, let me show you another example. This is a small web application or test application which is there. Okay, say for example, I search for Huggies Wonderpants. Huggies Wonderpants, it is there on Amazon, Flipkart, and numerous other sites. Essentially, what this particular product does is it fetches the price and displays it over here. This is a test web application. Okay, now let's say for example I want to get email alerts on this particular on these products. So what happens over here is the moment I do a add email, okay, this particular these particular boxes appear which is not there initially, right? And when I do across these these windows go away. If you take a look, I'm not making any particular contact with my server, so whatever is happening on my local machine. Okay, so how this is becoming possible is because I'm using JavaScript on my HTML page. Is it clear? Yeah, Shrikant, you're very much right. This is what exactly I meant. And Praveen, you're right. JavaScript is for validating the input in the client-side browser. Very much right. So, I mean, validating is just one thing. You can do numerous other activities. Activities is rather a very casual word over here, but you can build certain business logic onto the client-side browser as well. Okay, let's move on. So what we have over here, let's take a look at this particular example. Okay, and at this point of time, we, what we have done till now is, we have taken a look at, responsive web application, and also seen, how different companies, one example we took was Flipkart, they are implementing it. We also took a look at the grid structure. Now, this is a very rudimentary example over here. Okay, what I have on my page is a very simple Hello 1 and Hello 2 application. Essentially, what I wanted to show you is that when I'm, kind of reducing the screen size, it is automatically fitting into that particular structure. Okay, how is it happening? Let's again, this is a very simple example. I'm using a grid-based structure. What I'm doing is hello 1 or hello Edureka. Okay. How is it, how we have been able to do it over here? Let's take a look at the grid structure. So you guys see, this is grid 34. There would be a grid 24 as well. Yes. So if you take a look, what I'm doing is I'm using a container of size 24. First of all, I'm defining that, okay, I'm making a particular container over there. Okay. Within that, I'm defining that, okay, I'm going to use a grid of 10 size. What does grid of 10 mean? Grid of 10 means, something with a width of 390 pixels. Okay. At the same time, I'm also able to define using, media queries as to how this particular grid is going to behave if the width of that particular application is changing. So all in all, you can say it's more or less the same thing what we show on Flipkart. Okay, but only thing is this is not in a minified form. This is in the non-minified form. So all I want to say is, this is a very simple example of a responsive web application. Okay, and a more elaborate ones is the one we show, which we, which we got to take a look on Flipkart and all. Okay, at this point of time, let me take a brief pause and, also cover. We discussed PHP and MySQL also, right? So I wanted to show you a brief application about how, touch upon these areas, how PHP and MySQL is interacting, and how it is, actually we touched upon this area, right? Where we said that, okay, PHP can help you in retrieving certain information from MySQL database. Let's take a live look at a live example. What I'm doing over here is I want to take a look at the price of Huggies Wonderpant on different sites, whether it's Amazon or Flipkart. I don't want to individually go onto Amazon. I don't want to individually go onto Flipkart and take a look at the prices over there. So what it does is, this particular information is there in the database. This particular application has an ingredient of Python also, but I'm not touching upon that as of now. Now let's take a look how it is happening. So guys, this is the controller. We spoke about MVC architecture, right? So this particular price watch application, it has a model, it has a view, it has a controller. What we are seeing over here is the view. Now, who is rendering this particular view is the controller. How is it happening? It's happening over here. Let's take a look at this particular thing. Essentially what I've done over here is we have a particular variable by the name customer search record. Okay, and we're using this is the MVC, this is the format, this PW customer search. Essentially, this has the definition of that particular table. If you go ahead and search for it, I would be able to see it says uses. Guys, this might be a little technically heavy. So if you have any question, do shoot it to me at this point of time. I would be glad to clarify it over here. Okay, so what happens is when I say uses, essentially what I mean to say is PWC customer search, this has a particular model which is already defined and we are using it. But before we do that, let's take a look at where I have a web application and I have a database. I have PHP, I have a database. How do so the mechanism in which the information as to which database to connect and how to fetch information in Cake PHP is stored in config folder, and within config there is a file by the name database.php where this particular information is stored. Again, this is a very let's take a look at the layout of the structure that we have over here. We have model, we have controller, and we have just one guys. I need to move it a little down. Okay, and then we have view over here. Okay, in model we have the information about the table. So we took a look at the PW customer search over there, right? So this is the model definition. This is where that it says that okay, you know what, this particular this particular definition, when I say PW customer search in controller, this is what it means inside the model. So this is actually having the actual definition of the table. Again, just so when we say MVC framework and when we are talking about Cake PHP, we are talking about this particular, in this particular application, we are talking about model which is over here, residing inside of app folder, and this is true in most of the places where Cake PHP is installed. We have the controller over here which has the business logic and all, and then finally we have the view. So view is what is being shown to the user. So if you take a look at plan list, okay, which this plan list is already open, okay, this is what is being rendered to the user over here. So this plan list is being rendered by this particular page over here. Now what happens is when I do a search over here and say okay, I want to search for Huggies Wonder Pants, okay, it takes the input from the user, gives it to the controller, and controller knows that okay, this particular guy is looking for Huggies Wonder Pants, and this is what it does. Over here what we are seeing is a post request. When we are talking about post, what essentially it is meaning is this particular function was triggered as a result of a submission of a form. Okay, and then it is kind of doing a search on it and fetching the fetching this particular information and showing it back to the user. What it happens is, so index is what this is the index file. You won't see index over here because that is how it is. Okay, if I do index, you're going to see the same page. But normally the way it works is in case of Cake PHP, index is not explicitly mentioned. it is understood that is we are referring to the home page. And when I say home page, I mean home page for that particular web application. So when I do a submit on Huggies Wonder Pants, what is happening is, when I hit this particular get prices, this particular post is getting triggered. It is resubmitting the form on this particular page, and this is getting triggered. This particular post is getting triggered. It is saving this particular data, and then take a look. It is redirecting it to plan list. This is another function which has the business logic. Now let's come on to the plan list. Plan list is over here. What plan list is doing is, it knows what this particular customer is searching for, and it finds the relevant information, okay, and it displays that particular record over there, and it fetches it into an array. Okay, I'm sorry, it fetches it into that particular array. What it is doing is, this is a search string which was used by the user. Do you want to take a look at the SQL query? Let's take a look at that at the SQL query. Just a moment. So over here, what we are doing is, when I'm fetching that particular information, this particular SQL query is fetching the array over here, right? So at this point of time, I know that, okay, this particular, these are the data which I'm getting from a database, which is stored in my MySQL database. And let me remove this particular thing. And what happens, I am setting this particular product record, I am storing the information which I'm getting from a database, and I'm showing it, I'm sending it to the view. Okay, now what happens is, let's see if we have this particular record in the plan list. Plan list is what is getting rendered. So you see over here, this particular, the controller, what it has done is, one, it has accepted the user input and done a search on my database. Second, it has, whatever input, whatever it is, information it is able to retrieve from the database, it is putting it again into an array form and sending it across to the view. Now, it's very important, guys. This particular planlist.php, it is a component inside the view, and this is very much visible over here. So you see price watch, within price watch we have this particular plan list, and plan list, this is part of the view folder. Okay, so ultimately this is what is being rendered to the particular user. Sometime back did have a question on JavaScript and jQuery and all. So this is where that particular function is residing, as to if the user wants to add alerts to his email address, then he can do that. This is what we this is what we saw sometime back. Okay, and this is this is residing into your, I think we quite a number of people had commented, and I believe you guys understand this particular question. So guys, let's take a look at where we started, and let's take a look at whether we have covered those areas or not, and then we'll quickly wrap it up. So what at the start of this particular session, the objective was, we wanted to discuss in brief what the MVC infrastructure is about. what PHP and how PHP and MySQL interaction happens. I showed you using a very live demo as to how we are able to fetch in price information for Huggies Wonder Pants using that particular web application that we just discussed just now. Then we briefly touched upon arrays, strings, and conditional logic. Arrays, again, we showed you an example over here as to how the array is processed inside the controller and how it is being passed to the view and rendered in the view. And we took a look at what responsive web applications are there in the market. How and why it is getting traction. We briefly took a look at Yatra.com and Flipkart.com and a few other sites. At this juncture, if you have any question, I would be glad to answer that. Megraj has a question about whether all the classes are inbuilt or we have to design them. There are let me take this in this way. When we are talking about classes, we need to understand what classes are we talking about. From a HTML perspective, CSS perspective, jQuery perspective, or from a PHP perspective. But I would say the same answer is applicable everywhere. Since this is a language which has been in existence for the last 20 years, there has been a lot of user contribution, and there are reusable classes which the developer community around the world is reusing. Praveen has a question on can you please elaborate on the framework? Framework is like a template. Yes, Praveen, framework is like a template, essentially what it does is, how should I put it? Framework is something, it's not the language itself. Okay, so language is at the bottom is again PHP only. And the same is applicable for other, other languages also, wherever you have a language and a framework. But what framework defines is how that particular language has to be used in order to attain a certain objective. And that objective can be security, that objective can be data abstraction, that objective can be, you're building business logic, which is hidden from the user. But, each of these areas, this particular framework, they help they don't alter the language itself. The language is still PHP, whether it's Cake PHP is a framework, or Coordinator is a framework, or if we are using any other framework, at the bottom you still have PHP itself. Devdatta has a question on how we have Eclipse for Java. Is there any IDE for PHP to develop? That's a very simple answer. You can develop PHP even using a notepad or even using a Gmail or something. The end point, what you need to do is, at the end of the day, you need to have a server on which on which you'll be able to test that particular thing. If you take a look, what I'm using over here, just a moment. What I'm using over here is a simple Notepad++. What is this? This is just this is an advanced version of Notepad application, nothing else. For all it matters, I can use a Notepad and achieve the same result, as long as I am able to put my files in the right folder. And when I say I'm right folder, I mean I have this particular web server over here. If I'm able to update my the MVNC, and by MVNC I mean the model view and controller over here, with the right set of files, I'll be able to use it. It doesn't matter actually. Migraj has a question. Can you please mention the web links where we can learn to use the Cake PHP from scratch? Okay, Migraj, to answer your question, we at Edureka, we have this particular course on PHP and MySQL. one such course is starting this very particular weekend. Uh, you can take this course and you know build upon that and learn the Cake PHP from there. And if you want to learn Cake PHP on your own, there is a very good website. It's Cake PHP cookbooks. If you do a normal Google search, you'll be able to find it over there. For any additional assistance, yeah, I believe the team at Edureka would be glad to assist you. Guys, again, I'm getting quite a good number of questions. I might not be able to answer all the questions. If I'm not able to answer your question, my sincere apologies. Please don't feel bad about it. I'll definitely try to reach out to you and answer those questions. Thank you, guys. It was lovely interacting with you. What I'll just do is I'm briefly take you through the curriculum that we have on, on the PHP over here. Like you mentioned, at Edureka, we have a course on PHP and MySQL, and we cover the topics in depth as far as PHP and MySQL is concerned. Uh, if you take a look, if I were to see my screen, we have PHP basics, conditional logic, forms, functions, handling, error handling, object-oriented concepts, MySQL, introduction, basics, data manipulation, advanced queries, backup and recovery methods, and then you have a couple of projects. The way it works is in Edureka, you have live online classes, and since we are living in a very fast-paced world, it's quite possible that we might sometime miss out on a class. So you have class recordings at your disposal, and also to refresh your learning from time to time. So this is the class recordings are accessible to you throughout as long as you have a user, you have your user registered in Edureka. You also have 24/7 support. You have module wise quizzes which help you in kind of seeing how good your understanding of that particular module has been. Yes, there are a couple of projects first which help give you a very live environment to understand the project, execute a particular project. And at the end of the day, there is a certificate that that is about you have been able to do your learnings are well on track, and which you can use it when applying for jobs in different places. With that, I guess we have it to the end of the session, and my sincere thanks to each one of you. I mean, it has been lovely interacting with you guys, and definitely look forward to hearing from you. Some of the questions I might not have been able to answer, I'll definitely try to reach out to you guys and ensure that queries have been answered appropriately. And guys, at the end of this particular webinar, you'll be prompted for a survey. Please do take your time and fill up those survey. Thanks again. Bye-bye.